Here's a really fun way to go after the birds. This is another strategy that's really popular, and it's called running and gunning. And basically what you're doing there is you're just getting out, getting lightweight and getting mobile, and you're cruising, trying to strike up a bird with calls. Once you get one struck up, you're going to try and set up and get set up on him. So what would be some equipment that you'd want to use if you're going to go out running and gunning?
Yeah, being lightweight is huge. So you're going to want to have a compactable turkey chair that we've shown video of, because it's lightweight. You can put it on your shoulder with the strap, and in a run and gun situation, you're not going to want maybe your full decoy spread if you're using 2, 3, or 4 decoys or something like that. Typically, you might want to just grab a hen decoy. You know, keep it real simple and keep it lightweight, because you are going to be sneaking and creeping, so you don't want a bunch of gear bogging you down and creating a lot of extra movement for you. So
yeah, and a lot of times you might strike up a bird that the first time he gobbles, he's only 100, 150 yards away from you.
Right.
So you don't have a whole lot of time to look for the perfect tree and set up multiple decoys. You know, that turkey chair, you can just open it up, set it down at the best place that's going to provide cover for you, and have you set up for looking down the barrel of your gun towards where he's coming from, and then run over and set that decoy up in that same direction and be ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as far as the strategy of running and gunning, you know, basically what you're doing is you're covering ground and you're throwing out calls. And typically you're going to use your louder calls. You're going to use like a string of yelps or what's called cutting. Cutting is like an agitated, you know, it's like a yelp that's really getting excited. Some people call this technique cut and run. And you're just trying to get that bird that maybe it's midday and he's lost his hens, and he goes, shot gobbles back to you and says, yeah, I'm over here, come to me. And you're trying to light that bird up. So basically what I do is I'll try and cover maybe about 100 yards at a time, get close to an area that looks like it'd be quick and easy to get set up if a bird responds, and then I'll throw out a string of yelps, wait for a minute or two, throw out another string of yelps, and see if anything responds. If not, I just keep heading that forward, you know.
Yeah.
Keep covering 100-yard chunks and calling until you finally get one to respond.
Yeah, and I'm a huge advocate of knowing the layout of the land. So you got two different equations going here. In most situations, you're either going to know the property you're hunting, and you're probably going to know it pretty well, or you're not going to know it that well. You know, so a prime example is this. We talk about growing up in northern Indiana, and we're hunting little woodlots with ag fields around them typically, and it's pretty flat for the most part. Now, if we go a couple hours south of us, you start getting into national forests and public ground, which is where we wanted to pursue the run and gun strategy growing up as kids. It's totally different. It's like hunting Kentucky, where there's, you know, hills and hollers, and like, how do you maneuver and what do you do? So I'm a huge fan, going back to the Onyx app and looking at the layout of the land. If you know a bird's out in a field, let's say he's vocal and you want to make a move on him, it is awesome just to real quick, you know, pull up that app if you don't know the layout of the land like I'm talking about. So the reason I'm using that term is what I mean is the topography. You know, is there a low spot? Birds can see. We've hammered that issue. Their eyesight's incredible. That's where you're going to mess up if you're going to mess up with running and gunning. I love the strategy, but man, you talk about a world of frustration, especially getting started.
Yeah.
Because you have a tendency to take it for granted. You always in your head think, oh, I can stalk, I can get a little bit closer, I can do this and that. And there's not much margin for error. And so that's why topography is a big deal to me, because I want to know, even if I have to go the extra mile, if I'm hunting down in Kentucky and those hills or hollers, and there's a bird that's hung up, he's vocal, I know where he's at, and I know that I assume he wants to stay there. If I have to jump 2 or 3 ridges over just to make sure that I'm out of his sight, then I'm going to do whatever it takes. If I've been in situations, literally I've belly crawled through creek bottoms just to stay low profile and make sure that I wasn't being silhouetted through the woods. So really knowing where to maneuver and where to go, and going back to those natural barriers and things like that, and figuring out where fence rows and all that makes the strategy so fun. It's a giant chess game when you're running and gunning. It's awesome.
Yeah, so you get that bird struck and he's gobbling, you know where he's at. You sit there and listen, and every time you try and strike him up again, he sounds like he's in the same area. Then you're going to try and make that move based on trying to get a little bit closer but not push it too much.
Right.
Yep. Now there's other situations. You may strike up a bird and get that initial gobble, and maybe he gobbles back to the second string of yelps and then suddenly goes quiet. In that situation, plant your butt right there and wait. You know, he may not come in, you may never see that bird at all, but a lot of times when they respond a couple times and then go silent, it's because they're covering ground coming your way.
Yeah, and you don't want to be up moving thinking that you need to be the one to hurry up and get to him.
Yeah.
At that point. That's
Yeah.
a great point, great tip.
Exactly. So there's three main scenarios that really lend itself to run and gun hunting. Number one would be if you're on vast tracts of public ground. You know, if you're on, say, 200 acres of private ground, you can run and gun through that in about 30 minutes and you've busted everything out of there. So
it's a great way to make the neighbors happy because you can push birds right to them and really ruin your spot quick.
Or if you're hunting with other people on the ground, it's a great way to make them really mad.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you're talking big tracts of ground, that's a perfect time for run and gun. Another time would be that midday. You know, those birds, they've hit the fields or the woods and they've strutted around with their hens and all of a sudden they've lost their hens. And they get really responsive. But you've got to be within hearing distance of them to get them to respond to you. So cutting and running and gunning, that can be a great strategy to employ, you know, during the midday.
Yeah, and that brings up a great point too. Make sure we always talk about laws and regulations and staying legal. Every state can be completely different on how long you can hunt. When we first got started, I think we had to be out of the woods by like noon or 1 or something.
Yep, had to stop hunting at noon and be out of the woods by 1.
Yeah, there you go. So now Indiana's changed its regs and now we're allowed to hunt all day. So there's quite a few states where you can't, where you still need to be out of the woods by 1. So make sure you keep that in mind.
Yeah. And then the third point where running and gunning would be a good opportunity to use would be, let's say that you're brand new to the area, you didn't get to get out and roost them, you don't have a clue where the birds are going to be, and you just want to get out and run, gun, learn, and hopefully hit that bird up. That's another time that would be great if you're kind of going in blind, so to speak, and you don't have information about where to start off. So a lot of different tips with running and gunning. It's a really fun way to hunt, really good way to learn a bunch of things and get involved in that chess game.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll show you here just a quick little video about me out in Kansas being able to run and gun and luck into a bird. I went out and started driving around looking and just doing a little bit of scouting. I came across a spot that looked pretty good. Saw a couple turkeys working across an open cornfield, and so I found out who owned it. Stopped and was lucky enough to get permission, so really appreciate that. And made it out here and just barely working the edge. I mean, I'd only been hunting for half an hour and thought I found a spot that looked like it'd be a nice place to just sit up and take a break and call for a while. Before I even had my butt on the ground, I turn around and look and there's a tom on the other side of the field. That goes to show you how things can change quick. Out here in Kansas, I've just been slipping the edge of this cornfield. Thought this looked like it'd be a good place to set up. Started getting things set up. I hadn't even sat down and I turned around and looked. And this Tom is walking along the edge of the cornfield, 120 yards away. Managed to get the camera out, get it on the tripod. Couldn't even get a decoy out, managed to get a mouth call out. I waited. He worked along the edge of the field there. Once I felt like I had everything set up, I went ahead and threw some soft yelps out. Took him a long time to commit. He kept going into strut, and then he started getting a little bit impatient. Started gobbling. I let him get cold feet. Once he started getting a little bit concerned that he wasn't going to be able to get that hen to come to him, he came in and decided he was going to take a look. Left me the smell of some gunpowder in the afternoon, I guess. Hey, I don't care when I'm smelling gunpowder. Morning, afternoon, evening, it's all good.